Welcome back to the channel. If you haven't been following, we are going to be resuming the work on this 73 Porsche 914 Alaska Blue. We've got a lot to get done today, so we're going to kind of jump right into it. If you can, give us a like and subscribe. It will really help the channel, and we are always interested in your comments. Okay, right, so we are working on this Porsche 914, and I'm going to get this car painted, ready for paint. One of the things we want to do is address this antenna. This antenna here is obviously not a factory antenna, and it looks rather like it comes out of the Smokey and the Bandit era of CBs or whatnot, and just doesn't look very nice. It just has a look that is really just wrong to the car. So we're going to replace that with the proper factory antenna, but also at the same time we're looking at the location that they chose to put this antenna, and it is a bit unusual. If you notice, it's really far forward, and the factory did provide some guidance as to where these were to be installed, and of course they didn't come with antennas pre-installed from the factory, but they did provide guidance as to where it should go. And so we're going to be looking that up, and then we're going to be placing this in the proper location and getting the proper antenna for this car too, so we don't have this going on anymore. Now this is a template that is from one of the stereo manufacturers. I believe this was the Blaupunkt, and they instruct you to cut this out, place it on the fender to mark the location. It's really not necessary to cut it out. You can really just get the dimensions from it. 10.75 inches one way, and looks like 1.25 in the other direction. So our vehicle in question here, we measure about 12 3/4. That puts it about 2 inches forward than the recommended by Blaupunkt. It's also much more outboard than the recommended 1 1/4, so it really doesn't look proper. Now I thought I'd do a little survey of a few 914s I had some access to, and see how they compare to the recommended location. Come here. Hey. And we'll look at my car, and it appears that it's about 3/4 of an inch forward from the Blaupunkt. This one here is actually very far outboard, so much so that it's on the curved part going down. Really doesn't look right. So there's certainly a range where it looks fine, and then there's a range where it sort of looks a little odd. Okay, so there we have it. That is the difference between where the antenna is and where the antenna should go if you're following the dealer instructions from the radio manufacturers as to where this thing is supposed to go. And just looking at it, I can kind of get why they would not want it to be right here. If you take the antenna, you might think, oh, if I put the hole there, we might be getting too close to that. But I would have to agree that, believe it looks much better this way rather than being so far out. But probably the most objectionable thing about this is just this kind of antenna here. So I'm going to be installing a radio antenna, chrome and black, from Stoddard, and this appears to be a very good replica, if not the original antenna for this car. Well, unfortunately, no, this is not an original part here, is it? Okay.
Just double checking.
And so there we have it. There is our antenna now installed in the official factory approved location. And I have to say that looks a lot better, being closer to the original, to the factory position. And this antenna, of course, can telescope pretty high. In my car, I like to just leave it about like so, and that looks the best in my opinion. So I just happen to have a piece of galvanized sheet metal that just saved this scrap from some project I was working on, so it seems to be just perfect. We will mark it up. And then we'll go cut that out. And then I will get my son Luke to weld this up. Luke has become a very proficient welder. And we'll get this fixed up.
move on to getting the bodywork finished on this car. If you recall, in the previous episode, the left rear fender was just caked in Bondo, and we spent a lot of time just grinding that stuff off. It was pretty thick. So in the repair, you'll see we're going to be adding some more filler out, of course, because the fender is just too many irregularities. But we're gonna get that done in a much nicer manner, using a lot less filler as we do so.
So I'm going to work out some of these areas where we got some high spots here. I don't know if you can see that, but the metal is sort of moves easily right there. That's one thing we want to try to eliminate with when we're hammer dolling this thing, is so that the metal is stable once again, because we just don't want that. It's not supposed to be like that. It's not there anywhere else, and it's going to be kind of hard to sand it and get it to be nice and flat again. So we're going to try to work on that, and that's going to mean just pounding out some of these creases.
Overall, the metal is just stretched. That's why it's behaving that way. So we have to do with the dolly is try to shrink the metal back.
Now what I'm going to be using here is I'm still trying to shrink the metal back so I don't get this popping. I've almost got it all the way gone, but there, just a little bit. I'm using a shrinking hammer and a dolly, and what I'm trying to do is bring out the metal and then shrink around the high spot. So what happens so often on these 914 is, of course, the rear collision, it causes these fenders to sort of puff out. And so you end up having to shrink the metal back. And that's what's going on here. I'm basically trying to get this metal to, it's got like this bow here, and it's just trying to shrink it back into space, into the normal position, so it's not all puffy here, getting it to flatten out basically. Okay, so we've worked this panel over quite a bit here, and I think we're about ready. I do not get any more of the in and out effect there, so it's the material's more or less stabilized. It's strong again, and I feel safe. We can put some body filler over the whole thing, and we'll see how that goes. I believe we should be able to get it with quite a bit less body filler than it had before. Definitely.
When you have a fender that's badly damaged like this one was, you are going to have to use some filler unless you go and weld on a whole new fender. What I try to do is use as little as possible.
Now we got a little rust hole right here, so I'm going to drill it out a little bit, make that hole a little larger. Now that stuff coming up there is like a body seam sealer, and they push a lot of it under here, right under that area. So I'm gonna drill this hole out until I feel like we got good metal again. I'm just gonna go over, the filler is dried, and I'm just gonna go and knock off some of the high spots. We've got quite a bit on this side here, and it looks like a whole lot, but it is really just a skim coat over the whole thing. You can see a lot of the metal showing through there. And so yeah, it looks like we're doing clay modeling here, but it's really a skim coat. So next bit is we're going to sand all this down with a long blade and see how it comes out. And the rest of the car, it doesn't need a whole lot of filler. You have a little bit right here where we remove these lights, and then here always wherever you have a badge. I don't know why people like to press on the badge or whatever to close the hood or whatever, but you always need a little there to get that straight. Okay, so I have switched over to a smaller level. It's still longer than a normal bodywork file, but it's helping me out because I find that this is just helping out a lot better, especially for areas like this where I have to actually open the door in order to sand it. But as you can see, we've gotten it sanded first pass. We've exposed some high areas. We've hit some of those down, and you can see the darker areas are here where the sand doesn't get. It looks like, so I've got a little bit of additional filler to put on, and so we'll do that next. Okay, well, we've got our second coats of filler dried on there now. Again, these are all just skim coats. Very, very light amount of filler. And now we're just going to take our sanding blade to it again and repeat the process all over again. And we do have to be careful not to put too much pressure on the body, else we deform it as we're sanding, and that kind of defeats the purpose. So we really got to let the paper do all the work. So as we're cutting it, we always be mindful little high spots start to appear. And what I'll do on that is I'll tap that down with the hammer. So we don't have to put so much filler everywhere. We just tap this little spot down. Okay, so now I am moving on to sanding with 80 grit paper. Up to now we've been using the 40 grit, which is leaves a lot of scratches, right? So now we're going up to the 80 grit, and I'm going to use it on the air file, just because I've got kind of a lot of spots to do. And I feel by using my hand, running it like this way, I feel like the imperfection is gone. And I'm going to use the air for this, as I'm getting a little tired of sanding without assistance. So, actually I need to put a little oil in there, but with 80 grit. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is over a few of the areas that are pretty well finished, I'm going to apply a very micro skim coat. And the goal of this skim coat is not to build up at all, but merely to cover any scratches and then possibly fix any very micro sort of imperfections.
Bodywork on a car can take a lot of time, and it's best not to rush it. What I like to do is just come out, do a little work, and then go off and do something else, and then come back, do a little more.
Okay, so one of the things we have to take care of also on 914s is the valance and the rocker panels. This is a valance panel that came off the car, and we basically had to strip it. They get so beat up because they're in the front of the car. They're always taking they're always taking the rocks and all, everything, the abuse. So we're gonna have to basically put a coat of filler over the whole thing, is what we've done, because we've already beaten out all the dents, but there's just some of them that are just it's kind of all over, so it's gonna need to be worked all over. And just a minute. What are you doing? What are you doing out here? Hey, what are you doing? What are you doing? You're not supposed to be out here. You want some playtime? Want some playtime? It's a good little rabbit. Very beautiful animal. Is that how you're supposed to be? Huh? No? No way? Okay, so now we're gonna just fill on this front valance here. And we're just gonna put a skim coat over the whole thing, because the whole thing has little dents all over it. next bit, I am going to be spraying some epoxy primer onto the vehicle. And this is going to do two things for us. One is for areas where I have exposed metal, you need to put something on there before you start putting regular paint on there. And that's what this stands for, direct to metal. So that will take care of that. Now, a lot of times you can just use some self-etching primer for that, but I have to also do a second use for this. Is I want to seal certain areas on the car. So that's what this Mason does. It will do a seal. It will seal the bottom layers of the paint, and so that we have a good foundation on which to apply.
So the epoxy primer will go over areas where you have metal exposed, or areas of paint that you just want to seal. But in a bit, you'll see me applying primer over body filler, and what I'm using there is actually a high build primer that is going to fill in the scratches left in the body filler. Now you can also get high build primer that is direct to metal, and that is a good solution for having a product that can basically handle both situations of where you need to build and where you just need to cover. And with that, that's all the time we have for this video. In the next video, we're actually going to bring the body into the final prep for painting and actually paint the car. So be sure to come back and check that out. Until next time, juice.